Vault Breaker is mid. That's it. That's the video. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk.
That's all, folks.
Just kidding, there's more. Come on back in here, you rascals. Marathon Update 1.1.5 launched on July 21st and introduced their first fully PvE focused experimental mode, Vault Breaker. For those who don't know, Vault Breaker allows you to play their endgame map, Cryo Archive, as a solo, duo, or trio with only the UESC bots to worry about. Absolutely no PvP in sight. There are several good aspects regarding the new mode, but I do believe Vault Breaker has exposed one of Marathon's biggest flaws that I honestly haven't seen many people talk about much. Stick around to find out what it is. First up, the pros. Accessibility. Vault Breaker makes Cryo Archive much more accessible to casual and or lesser skilled players. Bungie hyped up Cryo Archive so much leading up to its launch that once upon a time, they had asked game review companies to delay the reviews of the game until the map was fully playable. And I may just be lazy, but I do think Cryo Archive lives up to the hype. I don't think it's superfluous to say that Cryo Archive may be one of, if not the most, ambitious and well-made maps in the entire extraction shooter genre. However, the map has not earned the reputation of the lose everything factory for nothing. All it takes is one bad weekend at Cryo to go from a decent looking vault to looking like Squidward when he quit his job at the Krusty Krab. There are plenty of casual or lesser skilled players who have either tried it a little bit but then got turned off, or just never even attempted to try the map in the first place. Whether this is due to gear fear, not having a consistent 3-stack to run with, being unable to learn the map while fighting for their lives against more experienced teams, etc. Vault Breaker gives players a chance to try the map, get a small taste of the experience, and all with virtually zero risk. Knowledge. Vault Breaker allows players to get a baseline level of knowledge of Cryo Archive and how it works. This goes a little hand in hand with the previous point, but I do think this warrants its own talking point. I was very fortunate to have two friends that are pretty experienced at navigating Cryo Archive, and they were able to help guide me through until it became second nature to myself. All I had to worry about was keeping the crew safe. This is not the case for every player out there. And YouTube guides are great and all, but there is a big gap between watching a guide and actually beginning to apply that knowledge in actual high stakes pressure situations. Allowing players to begin learning how to efficiently navigate the terrain of Cryo Archive, learning the patterns of where things spawn, learning which areas have unique bonuses, will allow them to enter the real deal with a much greater degree of knowledge and confidence, which are honestly the most important things to have in an extraction shooter, in my opinion. Gun skill and coordination are great, but if you are constantly second guessing yourself and moving inefficiently because you don't know where anything is, where you're going, or what you're even trying to accomplish, all the mechanical skill in the world won't mean diddly squat like going up against knowledgeable, coordinated 3-stacks. Roguelite elements. I was actually having a conversation about the similarities with roguelites and extraction shooters the other day with my longtime friend, A Fine Cup of Joe. If you see this, I love you, brother. Stay happy and healthy. Roguelites, you use knowledge from previous runs and upgrades you acquire along the way to get further and further until you succeed. Extraction shooters, it's slightly different as you accumulate gear and upgrades between runs, assuming you survive, but as a similar parallel. You are going to fail a lot in extraction shooters, but you use the gear you accumulate over time along with your growing knowledge in order to have more and more successful runs in your future. In Vault Breaker, you are forced to use a gray starter kit, and it can actually be a bit difficult completing a run, especially if you're playing solo. I made a beginner solo Vault Breaker guide short, so go give that a watch. I would greatly appreciate that. But you use the currency you extract with, vault data, to upgrade the starter kit over time, so you begin future runs with better gear, allowing you to complete said future runs more efficiently. I have a soft spot for roguelites, and I think this progression system is a super cool and interesting way to keep the Vault Breaker mode from getting stale too quickly. I would love to see either Bungie in Season 3, or perhaps another company entirely, attempt to delve deeper in exploring meshing roguelite elements and extraction shooter elements together. Rewards. Let's say that you don't care about knowledge or experience for newer or lesser skilled players. Fuck them nerds. There are rewards that you can purchase for excess vault data you've acquired that can transfer to your vault for use in the base game. And some of these rewards purchased via tier 2 vault data are actually pretty nice. But I want to emphasize that they did not go overboard with the rewards that you can earn from this mode. I've seen between all the Doom posts and horny freaks on Marathon Twitter, no, seriously, some of y'all need Jesus, that there were concerns of the rewards potentially oversaturating the economy for a PvE mode that carries zero risk. The really good rewards do require a good bit of grinding in Vault Breaker to get in the first place. Tier 2 vault data is much slower to accumulate than Tier 1 vault data. And most of these better rewards are limited to one purchase and then they are out of stock. This is just a nice incentive for newer players and veteran players alike to give the mode a try, and there's nothing wrong with that in my opinion. Now, if you know me, then while I do love Marathon, and I acknowledge that bias, you also know that I do my best to stay as objective as possible. And that brings me to a very fatal flaw with Marathon that Vault Breaker has exposed. And that is that the UESC AI enemies, in their current state, do not have enough depth or variance to carry a predominantly PvE focused mode. As a side threat or obstacle in the base game, when you are worried about PvP as well, they function just fine and serve their purpose. If you take the UESC too lightly or let them overwhelm you, they can hurt and do some serious damage. This leads to decision making as a team. Do you want to go loud and proud to take out the UESC quickly, but risk giving away your position to other teams? Try to take them out stealthily with melee, but that will be a much slower process. Or perhaps stealth around them entirely and try to use the UESC to your advantage as a possible warning sign for other teams pushing into the area. But when they are thrust into the spotlight as the one and only threat on the map that you need to worry about, things get boring and repetitive very quickly. Now, I will acknowledge that I am approaching this from the perspective of a veteran player with hundreds of hours in the game. Newer players will probably find that Vault Breaker retains its novelty for a lot longer than I have. I remember when the news broke that when the game director for Marathon, Joe Ziegler, stepped down, there were a lot of people freaking out on Marathon Twitter about how the game is going to completely lose its identity and become a PvE game. Vault Breaker should make it pretty apparent that won't happen, at least not anytime soon, due to the lack of depth and variance in the design of the UESC enemies. Marathon shifting to a full PvE focused experience in its current state would die out fast. Looking at one of Marathon's competitors for a second, Arc Raiders, the reason why there are so many players in that community that are much more heavily PvE focused is because the PvE in that game is so much more grand in scale than Marathon. So many different kinds of enemies that all have unique behaviors, how they attack you, weak points, size of scale, etc. The UESC and Marathon just don't come anywhere close to that. However, there is good news for Bungie. There is a lot of untapped potential when it comes to the UESC design. They need to introduce more variants that attack you in unique ways. Perhaps sword arms and rocket thrusters trying to bull rush you, while lesser armored variants with guns attack from range. Instead of just shields, varying how much of a bullet sponge they can be. Have some variants that are super heavily armored from the front, but have weak points on the back so your squad has to adapt and change how you confront them. Weak points in arm and leg joints that allow you to cripple enemies making them easier to manage and fight. The possibilities that Bungie has at their disposal when it comes to UASC are legitimately endless. It's just on them to realize that potential. Closing thoughts. Overall, I think that Vault Breaker is a good addition to the game, especially for newer players, either to Marathon as a whole and or to Cryo Archive specifically. For more experienced veteran players, I do fear that the mode will become repetitive and stale relatively quickly. But I do believe there is a ton of untapped potential for Bungie here moving into Season 3 and beyond, both in exploring roguelite elements being implemented into extraction shooters and making the UASC more captivating of a PvE threat. Let me know what you think of what I said and of the update as a whole in the comments section below. If you enjoyed, please consider leaving a like and subscribing to the channel. It truly helps out a lot. And as always, stay happy, stay healthy, peace.